Okay. Hello, everyone. I thought for tonight I don't talk about anything specific. Like, it's just one of those nights where, you know, I feel like I need to talk my soul out, you know. But anyways, an idea arose, strolling in the cities behind our eyes and dwelling on hidden greatness. There will come a time in human history where people will be strolling in the cities behind their eyes. You see, consciousness is about engagement with reality. And what technology is doing is replicating reality. The most fascinating technologies are technologies that appear to us are unnaturally made, but they are indistinguishable from nature. You know, human intelligence is kind of like this light, and the world is like this dark room. And the architecture of this dark room is lit up by the light of consciousness. We are creatures that require an instantaneous experiential position to know that we exist. There needs to be an originating attention or an original attention to the moment. At least so far, my understanding of mysticism, of, let's say, traditional spirituality, is this idea that the intelligence, that the intelligence in the moment sought to find its original game. You know, there's this idea of the original Earth, and then there's ideas of simulations of Earth. And you know, it's kind of like this feeling where you are in a world, but it's not the real world. You know, imagine that. You know, imagine, you know, a person goes to sleep and they have a dream, and their dream is exactly like reality, right? Imagine someone dreaming that they woke up and they lived the day and they went back to sleep, you know, but it's all a dream. The ancient yogis realized this. They realized that in their search for truth, or at least in the middle of their search for truth, the mind was acting like its own god, right? The mind is the mover of the world of our eyes. But how our intelligence moves, there's been many nights where I have just stared at the world. I've stared at the world and I've been like, okay, consciousness has found existence, just like the flag was planted on the moon, right? It was as if the mind's conscious ability planted itself in the body. It recognized it's like what human intelligence is how an experiential field of intelligence is existing separately to itself. We are the potential of how a universe moves to itself. Let me see how I can advance this episode. Let's start with an approach that human intelligence finds itself in a system. A system has a structure, but it also has a potential. Its structure is based on its context. Its potential is based on what its concept what the concept can do in the context. What the relationship of the human mind and human body are is that the mind is a converter of sensory perception into language. If someone was like, how can I make the world smaller than it is? That's in some sense like how stories were made, the inspiration behind stories. You see, it's intelligence that finds itself in a massive unknown world. This intelligence, sometimes when I look at the human brain, I feel like the brain is like the movie Castaway. Our brains are stranded in a meaningless physical landscape. And so what does the human brain do? The human brain makes a copy of the outer realms and in the inner realms, and it endlessly compares its own world with the world it has found itself in. So if what human intelligence has been doing is converting reality, and for me, like somebody saying a story of an event and somebody experiencing an event, it's like somebody experiencing something three-dimensionally and somebody relaying a three-dimensional experience, imagine in a two-dimensional way. The nature of language is kind of like how our attention, just like a person uses a spoon to like eat a portion of the food on their plate, so similarly human intelligence is using stories to, in some sense, make sense of the experience of the totality of existence. You know, this world is so incredible, and the mind's ability to tell itself stories is also incredible, because some of the stories the mind can tell itself in the present can become its future. You know, right now I am living in a world where my attention as a being, so imagine, let's make a comparison of somebody born 1,000 years ago, somebody alive, let's say 1,000 years ago, somebody alive in 2022, and let's say somebody alive in 3022. It's as if we were to have a comparison or a contrast. Imagine you took three people from three different time periods, and you wanted to see how their intelligence engages with their reality. The more we go back in the past, the more we realize what our ancestors feared, they did not understand. What was emotionally received was not properly intellectually compartmentalized. If we look at somebody alive 1,000 years ago, their expectation on their reality on how their life should happen held less dimensions than the expectations we have of the modern human being. What has really happened through evolution is that consciousness has become responsible for the sectors of its discovery. So as you see, when the mind is copy pasting the outer realms, it's kind of like our brain is how a physical reality moves our mind, okay? And our mind is how a non-physical reality moves the brain, you know? I find my attention going to this notion that the responsibility level for how existence is designed, or what existence's design is, has changed throughout time. You know, it's as if back in the day our ancestors just wanted to survive. There was no morality, there was no good and evil. Then there came a period in history where how our ancestors survived was important. Were they good? Were they evil? In the future there will come a time where our ancestors will not be occupied, our descendants will not be occupied by whether they were good or bad people, but it will be in some sense how efficient every action was to the achievements of the whole system. I gave a talk before this one about systems, and I forgot to mention something that I'd written in the subtitle, the concept of recursion. So this is important to know. In computer science, recursion is a method of solving a computational problem where the solution depends on solutions to smaller instances of the same problem. It would be kind of saying, like, somebody wants to solve a problem, the problem is too big, so they cut up the problem into smaller pieces, and they try to solve the smaller pieces of the problem. This is an incredible approach. I mean, I think it's just naturally there in the mind. You know, it's kind of like a person looking at Sherlock Holmes and being like, okay, when is this dude deducing? When is he inducing, right? And what is deduction? In some sense, you look at a general scenario and you make specific conclusions, specific observations. And what is induction? You see specifics and then you make a general consideration, a general conclusion, you know? I don't know what it is about the nature, poetically the nature of my own soul, that its fascination seems to be with how the future can be rather than how the present is. You know, as someone speaking about mysticism, especially someone who's looked at ancient texts and mystical ideology, I have realized that mystics shun, or yogis, let's say sadhus, truth seekers, Zen masters, bodhisattvas, not bodhisattvas, but let's say the enlightened folk of ancient time, they shunned the concept of time. That means it's like nowadays I'm like, okay, let's say I'm this person saying, hey guys, we gotta care about the future because why else is it here? But the ancient yogis had this attitude where they were like, buddy, there is no time. Time is the enchantment of the mind. You know, that was their attitude. But the thing I realized that I felt, I mean, this is a bold statement, but what I felt I realized that the ancients didn't, was that if a person is truly beyond time, if a person has a timeless certainty, then they would have no problem using time. For me, as long as you're trying to escape reality, you're not free from it. You know, contentment is a greater sign of freedom than the intensity to change. Time is one of the beginning ways a human being categorizes reality. You know, it's like after children what was the guy's name? Jacques Lacan or something. This psychologist had realized that there's something called the mirror effect, and the mirror effect is this idea that when a child is born and the child can discriminate, can notice itself in the mirror, that's when the child is an individual. It can notice its reflection in the mirror is itself. I remember I saw this video on YouTube, guys. It was kind of sad. It was a sad video, but it was also as from the perspective of someone interested in psychology, it was fascinating. Pretty much a bunch of these psychopath students from a university had connected a mirror to a tree in the forest. So imagine a rectangular mirror attached to a tree. Okay, and they were filming like how animals react to their own reflection. And there was a moment where it shows this big bear. This big bear is walking past the mirror, and the bear suddenly sees its own reflection, but then moves past the tree and doesn't see its own reflection. And the fear, right? There is a fear of, sure, let's say a predator that's crawling up towards its prey, like trying to catch its prey. There's the fear of the prey, of the predator, but then there's a fear of the moment not making sense. This is a huge fear, and I saw it in the psychology of a bear that moved past this tree, saw its own reflection, but looked behind the tree and there was nothing there, and the bear was going crazy. That means there should probably be this law that if we put mirrors in nature, it's going to psychologically destroy some animals, right? because the nature of the lesser species, like the way I feel lesser species have been intended, at least for now, to live, is not to be burdened with self-awareness. You see, it's kind of like a Buddhist believing in reincarnation, and the Buddhist being like, as long as the person hasn't reincarnated as a human, their task primarily is not self-awareness. It's as if consciousness, it's like if somebody's born as a squirrel or a bird, they're meant to kind of be the presence of the environment. But when you're born as a human being, it's kind of like you are here to have a conscious attendance to the intensity of unknown dimensions. So really, to be born as a human being is to be capable of meeting the unknown. So anyways, I saw this bear in this YouTube video tripping because it saw its own reflection, and it was so bizarre. Like, there was no logical way it could understand why it would see a bear, you know. A mirror is like magic for lesser species. Something strange though. You know, I might be one of the unique people who sees consciousness this way. You know how there's this commercial that says Red Bull gives you wings, like this energy drink, right? It's really that consciousness has given us wings, and consciousness is another way of saying a creature can at any moment, just like a bird can fly in the sky at any moment, the human mind, it's like consciousness can in any moment generate a world and fly in an invisible dimension. There is a huge chance that the human species has not yet still figured out what the proper use of the human mind is. And in some sense, we are living our lives without activating the full potential of human intelligence, right? In the future, when I say, you know, strolling in the cities behind your eyes, in the future they will not have fear of their inner realms, just like we don't have fear of the outer realms. Like, right, like people are afraid of stuff in life, but people are not afraid of being alive. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like fear belongs to the dualistic experience of the mind rather than the singular existence of the body. You know, really the main human fear is the fear of what can be but won't, you know? My biggest fear is that our species doesn't open its wings before it enters the void. There's a performance, you know. It's like it's really like, to me, this might be a bit of a kind of my own absolutist perception, but for me it's as if, why are human beings alive? The human intelligence is a performing intelligence, so it's another way of saying what great performance, you know, is the cosmos waiting for our species to perform. And the greatest performance of our species is to bring consciousness to three dimensions of life. There was the concept of Brahman, Vishnu, Shiva. Brahman was the creator archetype. Vishnu was the maintainer archetype, and Shiva was the destroyer archetype. And so really we have unconsciously been creating, unconsciously being maintained, and unconsciously being destroyed or destroying. But now there has come a time more than ever that in order for the human species to fly in the worlds it truly deserves, it's like the species has to incorporate conscious acknowledgement of creation, maintenance, and destruction. You see, the beautiful thing about reality is that it's not just physically accessible, like sure, to the body, reality is physically accessible, but to the mind, reality is geometrically observable. The existence of the body, definitely something we can say that was born, but the experience of mind, sometimes I feel like a physical incarnation is like somebody opening a chapter of a book they had read a while ago and they had closed. It's literally to reincarnate as a creature in a world is like to open where the bookmark is in the book of time and history. This might sound strange, and people may think I'm a fool, right? But there is this very deep feeling, this really close feeling in my essence, as who I am as a person, where it feels that there has been a forgotten royalty. It's as if I have this feeling, this might sound bizarre, but I have this feeling that, why not? I'll say it. I feel my mind has been enlisted by the soul of the future. So what I'm trying to say is that I have this feeling that I am serving an unknown kingdom. Now, some people are going to be like, Mr.Within, is that God's kingdom? Is that the devil's kingdom? It's like, what kingdom are you serving? And I will tell you, a new archetype class. For me, I realize that it's like when a person opens their eyes in a world, a bunch of options is given to them and they have to choose from the options. But because everybody is just trying to fit into the world, we never wonder if new things can happen in the world. I would say that, hilariously, if somebody, like if I was, if somebody like back in the day, like in medieval times, imagine I was like this sort of warrior, let's say archer or spearman. Sometimes I've thought if I lived in medieval times, what weapon I would use, But imagine somebody comes and says, Mr.Within, what kingdom do you serve? What kingdom are you from? And this is where I have made a decision, which I thought it may make all my ancestors frown. It may make the past frown. Imagine you have an option of doing something that would make the future smile or the past smile. Right? I chose what would make the future smile. and that was in a time where human beings were burdened by individual survival, the initiation of a collective game. I serve the future, and the king of the future is the collective timeless humanity. So, strangely, believe it or not, as I give these talks, I feel I am a servant of the future. Because there was a time where my mind, you see, the more, let's say somebody has, some sort of creative imagination. It's as if what the imagination is actually here for is to give us experiences, give us non-physical experiences that physically we don't have the time for. You know, imagine somebody was busy at work and they're like, wait a minute, I want to be a king though. Right? So they're so busy they can't be a king, but the mind has an ability to fathom the weight of a crown on their head, right? Guys, there was a time where I thought kings that wore like metal crowns, like they probably got brain damage if they wore it all the time, you know? Like some sort of pain, you know, to influence their decision, right? Can you imagine somebody trying to be a king, and when they become a king, they have to carry this giant piece of metal on their head all the time? But what I'm trying to say is that my mind acknowledged that the world in front of my eyes is happening in accordance to its own pace, in its own way, and then all the things that I wanted in my own way, my mind gave it to me. Do you know? So it's as if I wondered, what would I be if I was immortal, and my imagination created the first person perspective of a psychological entity that is starting with as a consideration it's immortal first. So I have realized that to take ownership in a changing world is to, on some level, accept we are the change of the world, right? That means, think about it. I am what is like a person is born, they're given a name, right? And their whole life they go on thinking they are their name and the subjective character in a storyline that accompanies their name. But imagine one day realizing that you are not a symbol on a piece of paper. And you are not a memory in the mind. That means, like, if somebody says, Mr. Within, is it possible to remember oneself beyond one's memories? I will tell you something incredible. Before we were a psycho-ideological entity, that means that before we were an ideology-oriented psychic entity, we were actually space. You see, it's as if let's say the grumpy old people of the world, let's say, can't understand why the young children laugh. And really, this is the idea that the more simpler you live, the more the world has an opportunity to surprise you. The more a person has expectation for reality, the less room they leave behind for surprises, right? So it's as if those living in a complex life will feel the burden on life to be only on them. But when, let's say, somebody lives, okay, let's say we have a simple person and we have a complex person, okay? They ask the complex person, what are you? And the complex person says, I'm a transmigratory soul, I'm this mysterious consciousness, I'm moving in the realm, that's what's up. It's like this complex situation with so many variables and dimensions, you know. That's what human intelligence is, right? And imagine they ask a simple person, what are you? And the person's like, I'm just being here, man. Right? That person who is just being here has the privilege of the unknown spirit of the moment to move them. Think of it this way, that space has two souls or two spirits, okay? And there is, in some sense, a spirit of knowledge, and there is the spirit of the unknown. So imagine every moment of consciousness constitutes an unknown spirit and a known spirit. Our biological existence Or let's just say that instead of spirit, I'll say, let's say every moment consists of an unknown force and a known force, like the yin yang symbol, okay? Imagine we're the circle, and like the yin yang symbol, in every moment there is an unknown force that moves the moment or holds the moment, and there's a known force that moves the moment and holds the moment. Now, me giving this talk right now, it's poetically how the spirit of the known, it's like the spirit of the spirit of knowledge is moving in my moment, right? But when I look at situations and I'm like, okay, there's it's like the moment, the event in the conscious moment is too unknown. Let me tell you, when it comes to the unknown, because our trust is conditionally based, when it comes to the unknown, because our knowledge of reality is conditions, right? The unknown is like trusting the unconditional. This is what religion somehow, in a genius way, managed to preserve in the psyche of the human being. That in this world, life doesn't happen unless we trust the space where it requires to happen in, right? It's as if the person, wants to build an advanced civilization, and then they're like, wait a minute, before I can build an advanced civilization, I must trust, have an unwavering faith that the ability is there. Right? For me, even though I'm giving these talks, I am telling myself that the idea of an advanced civilization is like the greatest glowing idea on earth, okay? There's like in human history, what has it been? Biological gene swarming on the surface of the planet has led to, let's say, the conscious separation of self from the world. This self has used language and memory and whatever it's had access to create a sort of narrative that closely resembles the truth of its perception. Now, what is going on the planet is that the brain is acting like a lantern, right, in the dark. And imagine like there's a bunch of birds, okay? Like imagine I don't know what you call it, like imagine a fleet of birds, okay, flying at night, like thousands of birds flying in a straight line in the sky, right? And imagine someone at night turns on like the most powerful like spotlight ever made, right? And so it's as if like it's like in the darkness where something is moving, in the darkness of the unknown and unconscious, our consciousness, our attention pierces through the unconscious with a sort of tool set of meaning at hand, okay? What I'm trying to say is that this world is so unknown, and it's happening in so many multidimensional ways, that if we base our trust on our familiarity with of the past, we cannot get to see. It's like, you know what's sad? Right? What is sad is that there's human beings alive, but they are not seeing the earth. They're human beings walking the earth, but they are not seeing the earth that is really here. Because let me tell you something no teacher in the educational system has had the courage to say. That, dear students of a known world, the original earth is silent, still, and flawless. What truth is remembering the undefeatable. What truth is recognizing a temporary life's narrative is instantaneously eternal. You see, I am not just being a person giving a talk. I am being how the energy of the universal sector, the energy of this part of the universe is manifesting, right? That means if somebody says Mr. Within, Do you speak for the people? Do you speak for the earth? Do you speak for the galaxies? Do you speak for the cosmos? And I'll be like, I can speak as the cosmos, or I can speak in the cosmos, because ultimately what true knowledge is trust in the unknown. There is no greater person. Like, whoever you are listening to me, think about what you think is greatness, and think about the people you've seen in life who you've thought they are great. They are great. Why? Because they have walked into the unknown. Those are the greatest people on earth. Those who that they don't even fear the unknown. Like, it's not an argument of fear. It's as if, imagine the fear never existed, as if the eyes of the individual are this advanced observance processing reality. Do you see? It's kind of like it's like, on some level, we're like, human beings are not machines, but when we look at the biological system, it's literally behaving like a mechanism. Like, it's like somebody looks at a clock tower, or a clock on the wall, and they notice the gears moving, and the person looks at the system of their physical existence, and it's like it's like hidden worlds of complexity hold that which deems itself simple. This might sound strange, but the meaning of life is to discover the potential of the world. Consciousness is a visitor in the unconscious. It's like, if the concept of good and bad never existed, perhaps the creature would ascend from its simple nature into an understanding of complexity. That, who are we kidding? Great. It's like the complex starts from the simple. Poetically, why is the soul watching itself in the void? Why has the known force and the unknown force in the moment danced in this way? Why am I giving this podcast in the cosmos? You see, there is I don't know how to say it. It's as if there are laws for the body, but there are principles for the mind. Guys, let me tell you something about the one inner realms. Okay. So I'm this philosopher saying, what's in front of your eyes is the outer realms. What's behind your eyes, what you can see behind your eyes, is in the inner realms. But what we see, it's like, even if a person has a creative imagination, the mystery of who is aware of imagination being real comes into the picture. You see, when I realize that in my value system of what kind of a person I am, I realize how many greater type of beings can exist. Imagine your mind is playing with infinite probability, and so for a moment you wonder about how many different ways, that the moment is happening that is greater than the moment I am experiencing. It's as if we are in the majesty, in the presence of the greatness of an unknown world, regardless of our stories of egoic victory or defeat. You see, it's kind of like the species is like 8 billion incredible breakdancers, and it's as if, these breakdancers are waiting to hear the music before they start dancing. And that great song is the song of the advanced civilization. The species is waiting for a vision that is, in some sense, imagine somebody found a solution to not one problem but to all problems in the universal sector. Do you understand? Like, the human effort is like, it's hilarious. It's as if like the stars reincarnated on Earth only to realize that they were the light of their eye, the light in their eyes. What energy is something that can't be created or destroyed and changes all the time. What the idea of the soul was in ancient times is the exact copy of the idea of energy. You know, that means, I'll tell you something bizarre about science. It was as if religion had entered the ears first. You know, that means it's like, think of the scientific, like think of Isaac Newton writing the Mathematica Principia, if I remember correctly. Okay, there we go. Okay, maybe it was just called the Principia. I don't know. Okay. So we have Isaac Newton writing a book called the Principia. There, I got it right. In another sense, some people call it Philosophia Naturalis Principia Mathematica. Like, what a name for a book. For me, the evolution of science was a sort of honesty with one's physical experience of life. You see, it's kind of strange, but logic was born in an unreasonable world. It's like reality is born in an abstract way, okay? You know, it's like, what is human life? It's like a self-extension of genetical replication. Really what it is we are all part of a biological program. Like, we gotta live with the program, right? It's as if kind of like, why did our ancestors live to get us here? And so comes the nature of the mind seeking its own greatest vision, looking at the sky above it and the sky behind it, and in some sense, the sky outside and the skies within. And to pilot in your inner realms, to pilot your consciousness, means the person has to be fearless. Like, they imagine somebody was scared, somebody didn't know what to do, but somehow they had this sort of ultimate courage, and people were like, you who are scared, how are you brave? And the person says, the mystery of the world is so supreme and fascinating that it surpasses one's emotional, ideological analysis of their self. It's as if when you realize that you are actually a mysterious being, everybody is being mysteriously being, you know? One of the most incredible Hall of Fame, let's say, writers in human history is this writer named Rishi Vyasa. Rishi Vyasa wrote this book called the Mahabharata, which is this great epic. I think it's like closest thing to like, let's say if people found alien spacecraft on Earth and they were super fascinated by this, right? Rishi Vyasa's writings were the second closest thing to as fascinating as that, right? So anyways, this dude wrote a book, and in this book, the narrator of the book was the concept of time, which is such a genius move on its own, right? You see, any of our ancestors that have managed to be able to trust a vision of the world, they were welcomed into the halls of, let's say, eternal remembrance. You see, dear viewers, I am just this person who's like, what is the most advanced strategy? As if imagine someone who's like, I'm imperfect, I have fear, inefficiency, ignorance. It's as if a person in a simulation being like, what do I do about truth? Right? And the only thing is to, you know what it is? Imagine a bunch of people got into Iron Man suits, and the Iron Man suits were like an onion. That means imagine somebody got in an Iron Man suit, then with the Iron Man suit got into another suit, and imagine every human being was wearing 8 concentric Iron Man suits, right? And for a moment they had forgotten that they were actually a biological being inside the Iron Man suit. People don't understand how genius, the concept of Iron Man is, right? So imagine in a world people are wearing 8 layers of suits, right? And they have forgotten that there are people inside these Iron Man suits. And imagine, one person realizes, what if there's an Iron Man suit? What if there's a simulation and the truth of the moment? And so it's as if imagine one person starts breaking all the Iron Man suits that they're wearing, right? It's hilarious. We're living in a world that our distrust renders artificial, and once we think the world is artificial, to be a real self is the last rebellion, Right, our rebellion on Earth with the forces of nature and the forces of the unnatural is simply to give ourselves the permission to be the human being that had never existed before until now. If somebody wants to use their mind, let me tell you this, you have to be able to honor the unknown views of your mind. If you fear the unknown, you can't see it. You can't see what's there, right? It's like the whole thing about the rope and the snake, right? There was a piece of rope on the floor in a room. Somebody opened the door and was like, no way, it's a snake. Their mind just unconsciously reacted, and they thought it's a snake. They closed the door and they were panting, right? And the friend of that guy goes in the room and sees it's just a piece of rope. But the person is so at the intensity of their unconscious reaction to a situation. It's kind of like, honestly, now we have the idea of good and bad, but in the future that's going to replace between an axis of conscious or unconscious. That means when a person does an action, what level of their psychological, it's like how has their mind become responsible for the existence of their body and the mobilization of their body. right? On some level, we're not living at that time. Maybe 400 years from now, the mecha age kicks in, and people are living in giant robotic. Like it would be very casual to walk in a giant robot in the future. You know, most likely, giant robots are going to be flying all over the sky. Right? Like if there is, let's say, imagine there's an extraterrestrial invasion of the planet Earth, right? Our strategy would be to send the mightiest to guard the front, right? Like in a time of war, right? A lot of people, like some kingdoms, when they were being sieged, they would settle it where they would put their greatest warriors for last. Do you know? It's kind of strange. There's a politics to a world that has rules. Anytime we're in a multidimensional system, right, where it's as if like how our mind happens is its own dimension, and how our body happens is its own dimension, and how we witness both of them happen is like, you know, a timeless entity, you know, flapping its wings in time, you know, simultaneously. It's like, to be the most advanced being, we have to look at all the dimensions of the human being and be like, okay, what do we do with everything that we see, right? This is the issue with modern analysis or modern knowledge, right? The strange thing about modern knowledge, that it thought by ignoring the past, it became something better, right? It's as if the person, like, to be honest, if a person really goes into the archetype of being, let's say, someone just who maintains reality through an empirical method, like science really is a method, you know, it's not like a, you know, it's more like a tool, right? It's like, so what I'm trying to say is that if a person bases the meaning of reality to something they see, like if I say, like, because my attention is seeing a physical world, there's only a physical world, I have instantly denied the possibility of anything else, right? So the issue with a scientific approach to reality is that there are dimensions of the human being that are functioning in accordance to abstract imagery, right? Like when a person is emotional, that's in accordance to how their inner realms is moving, right, into their outer realms, right? I am telling you, whoever's listening to me, all this is like my, you know, kind of, if I was an archer, this would be the arrow I am shooting at all the problems of humanity, right? All mental problems on the planet is because the species has failed to acknowledge that there is the inner realms and the outer realms, and the species has, in some sense, like true efficiency would be the synchronization of your inner life with your outer life. And we are living in a society where our outer life is kind of like the best we could offer, but it's not us. You see, it's as if we're alive in the world once, but the species has not found the capability to be itself in a changing world. You know? You know, sometimes being a philosopher is like you're a samurai slashing in the, you know, trying to slash the edge of reality. It's discrimination between what is an inner event of life and what is an outer event of life. And, you know, some people say imagination is not real, right? And let me tell you something. Imagination is 1/4. It's like 1/4 of what imagination is not real. Do you know 3/4 of it is real and accessible? So I'll give you an example. Like, if I right now I'm looking at this coffee cup, and I'm in my inner realms envisioning this coffee cup hovering in the air. So my mind is looking at a coffee cup right now, and at the same time, right, just by looking at the coffee cup, I'm envisioning like this coffee cup hovering in the air. Right, imagine it's the future and we have hover cups or something, you know. That would be an incredible cup, you know. imagine like there's going to be such advanced cups in the future that it's like your tea can never spill. Like advanced AI is making sure your teacup never spills, you know? You know, it's kind of like, what do we do now with the now? What do we do with the here and now? All these enlightened yogis being like, just be present or seek oneness with reality. Even Swami Krishnananda says meditation stops when you realize the inseparability of the individual activity with the cosmic activity. You see, the hilarious thing about consciousness is that it's trying to define the unconscious, but it doesn't realize consciousness is an extension of the unconscious. It's an expression of the unconscious. That means we have to consider, just like we have the concept of logic, there's the concept of anti-logic. Okay, but I'm using it in the sense of there's matter and there's antimatter. Right, so the antimatter of logic would be in some sense spontaneity, right? Because logic is based on past familiarity. What I'm trying to say is that if I envision this cup in my inner realms, I can see it. It has visual content, it has a structure, it has an ability to move, but I can't drink from the cup of coffee I imagine. I can see it. It's visible but not tangible. Because imagination is visible, it can't be considered unreal, but it can't be considered as real as physical reality, right? Because the difference between the imagination and, let's say, an imaginary cup of coffee and an imagined cup of coffee, or somebody visualizing a cup of coffee and somebody holding a cup of coffee, is actually the density of the projection. So really our imagination is like a holographic version of reality. Okay, what daydream is like an antenna discovering its holographic nature. You know, its signals are the hologram. What I'm trying to say is imagination is visible. Because it's visible, its content influences us, you know. You know, imagine somebody, it's like, what's the point of our dreams? Our dreams are hilariously unrealistic, visible experiences, you know. I'm trying to make this argument that even though the human being thinks it's a physical entity, it's living in a world in a non-physical way. We can see imagination, but we can't touch it, right? But we think we're only something that's physical, empirically known. You know, there was a time where I looked at the idea of religions, okay, and I thought, what if religions were codexes? What if the religious book was like a mysterious artifact that we didn't understand, right? I think that's an incredible question, right? That we look at something from a known way and then we look at something from an unknown way, right? People fear the unknown, but little do we know it's where everything's moving. You know. the future is going to pretty much be a technological retaliation to self-destruction, right? Pretty much it's not about us having world peace and everybody being happy, but it's more about an advanced civilization arises when a species becomes honest with itself. And true honesty means we realize what is looking through our eyes is unknown. Like seriously, what consciousness is how the unknown is holding a moment's knowledge. It's like the species has to get ready for so many, like, it's like I'm in that chapter of history where communication is the most advanced technology that could be updated in 2022, because there's, let's say, psychological ignorance in the species, right? But let's say, if I was to say what are the next chapters of phases human species will go through, right now it's an advancement of communication. The next phase will be one of a geometrical revolution. Our relationship with what is geometry is going to change. It's pretty much going to be like we looked at the universe and we're like, no way, we're made of the universe. It's like we're all the periodic table organized. We are the reorganization of the periodic table. Yay. What I'm trying to say. That a person is as advanced as their vision. Their vision is clear. Clarity is attained through honesty. Honesty is attained through the acceptance and contentment with simplicity. The geometrical revolution is going to be how we're going to start living lives as geometrical entities, either in cyberspace or just on a mystical level on Earth. Okay? After the geometrical revolution, there's the full fruition of the cyberspace revolution. So right now, I'm kind of like one of the early ancestors, in cyberspace, who's like just being one of the first human beings in his DNA lineage to like give a podcast, It's like I am being probably like one of the pioneers of how human DNA established cyberspace. What really cyberspace, a cyber life is how consciousness experiences an ability to occur in cyberspace that is so much more freer than the outer realms, that the cyberspace era will be pretty much an era of a term I've created in my science fiction. I call it techno-hibernation. So what that means is we're going to realize that through technology, we can still experience life. Like, let's say somebody wants to live a life where they're partying from the beginning of their life till the end of their life. They realize they can't do it biologically, right? So it would be as if you would put your body would be in something like this kind of, let's call it like a nutrition pod. Like it would kind of be like the movie Matrix, where the body is encapsulated in some sort of liquid and the brain is connected to a simulation of reality. So it would be as if the person, imagine somebody is addicted to cigarettes. In this sci-fi reality I'm saying, it would be as if they could go into this capsule and for 10 years their body's just healing in like this, let's say, technology pod, right? This futuristic pod, right? So their biology is healing and they are living their same life in a cyberspace realm that's a live streaming exactly the outer realms. pretty much there's gonna come a time where people are just gonna decide to live fully as minds, to have either their body heal or try to stretch out the lifetime as far as they can. Cyberspace culture is going to be that era where the title of this episode, Strolling in the Cities Behind Our Eyes, it's going to become psychologically real. You know what it is? It's kind of like language is the bridge, created a bridge between the real and the unreal. And cyberspace is creating a bridge, is like going to be another bridge between the real and the unreal. Right, but it's going to be a more psychologically coordinated bridge. So in the future, they're going to be so smart that the failures we imagine are not the actual failures they're considered. We have to feel excited about how ahead of us our future is going to be, right? Like when I look at my grandfather, like he sometimes struggles with like the remote controller of the TV, right? But when I think about like 1,000 years from now, what sort of alertness, with what sort of like it's like Earth is a history of like in the future the world is going to be filled with masters of what? Masters of perception, in the sense that it's like the energy. It's like if we are made of energy, the world is made of energy. Everything on an energetic level is already free. Okay, but it's that where consciousness is like how this unknown attention is being the energy, and because it's being it, it's bound by the conditions of the energy it's occupying. You know? Imagine there's going to come a phase in history where human beings are trapped in cyberspace. Not trapped, but it's like people are not living biologically physical lives. Everybody's kind of like, their body's healthy and they're only living in their minds in cyberspace. So imagine after the cyberspace revolution. So right now we have the revolution of the advancement of communication. That's the time kind of where I'm alive. Right? In the future, there's going to be the geometrical revolution. I'm on the brink of that era too. And I would say after the geometrical revolution, the cyberspace revolution, that chapter of history, but after the cyberspace revolution, we're going to step out. Imagine children that have been trapped in a cyberspace simulation suddenly escape that simulation to escape into the original Earth. Right? So that means that right now, because we're born in a natural world, we take nature for granted, right? And so let's say some people, they're still grateful for being a natural being. In the future, they're going to, from an artificial cyber reality, come back to nature. Once we acknowledge the different dimensions of reality, the intellect has realized different tools it can use. A person is not an image because the brain endlessly produces new images. Because the brain's nature is like that. It's kind of like to have an imagination is to like notice your attention looking at a river of geometry, river of geometrical conception. You see, it's as if something is moving here, And if we are honest, we realize we don't know what it is. But if we are dishonest, we assume we know what it is, right? And what has happened is that in the middle of nowhere, a creature has used sounds to convince itself that an inner symbolic reality is more important than the actual reality. It's as if the outer realms were so unknown that we were like, all right, in our inner realms, let's live in a reality that we can know it, you know. You know, guys, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna read for the viewers something I wrote in this unpublished book called The Source of Language. I wrote this in 2015, I think. So the book, it was pretty much a series of essays, and I'm gonna read for people the essay called "The God Within the Animal." So it's the 5th essay. So this is an essay I wrote in 2015. The God Within the Animal. It can be said the body is an animal, your mind is God, or rather your body is made of earth and your mind is made of sky. Therefore, all communication can be said to be the communication and movement between the earth and sky, the body and mind, and the animal and God. Eastern mysticism shines upon the view of the world that it is an unspeakable organism beyond the description of its parts. What that means is that from the shadows you cannot discover the true nature of the sun. Let us find the enlightenment that is quicker than light. For if you were an artist that wanted to draw your greatest memory of existence on a canvas ready for visual paint, how the world happens is quite the most beautiful thing. Many think life is about its length, but it is about its depth. The depth of life experience is a suggestion that when you wonder what is unhidden, when you wonder what is the best way to live life, it will be said you can get lost in a game of duality, which is the unhidden world that language walks on, or you can liberate yourself from how if you were to think beyond thought, there would be no thinker. Suddenly, the words of language have finally found themselves transparent to the world of direct experience. How you acknowledge this moment is important because every idea that you have on your moment will create an unconscious cycle of karma. In other words, language and art for the conscious self-aware being can no longer be separate. Excuse me, guys, I'll continue. I said, in other words, language and art for the conscious self-aware being can no longer be separate. How the moment must be acknowledged is that when you ask, who is asking? Who is the seer of thought? How is there also here? The source of language is always beyond what the language is. As Mr. Within has said, the letters of the alphabet are not enough. This universe is not a tangible fixed concept or idea, and it will never be. For as long as we have imagination, science cannot have the loudest voice. A self-reflective, divine, direct experience will suddenly, through the gates of silence and stillness, very intensely tear up egotistical conclusions about reality, in a presence in which, if you looked in your morning mirror, you would not see yourself as separate from the universe, but as the whole universe, as one moment of absolute being. You're not just looking in the mirror, the whole universe is. Are the letters of the alphabet enough? Enlightenment is stepping out of time through a self-reflection beyond time. No two people would be one person, for there would just be one person. When you flow with your true nature, that is this whole moment. You don't connect too many ideologies to self, for self is your pure moment. For self is your pure moment, always as it was, always as it is. There is no supreme idea of hierarchical intelligence with anger issues. The God of the heart is the best God, for it beats as the center of the breathable universe. Behind the eyes of ideas, there is no third eye of an enlightened master. There is the beauty of a moment that is its own mirror. Polished by nature, we were all divinity's work. If you look closely at these letters, you will see they are artwork. For abstraction is only pushed back by society's reality. For language was the smudge, and direct experience the glory wiping the mirror of new vision. The mind conceptually is void, but rich with subjective design. Has a thought taken off its mask? Has your solar presence realized it was never an individual soul, and the teacup had to be empty before it's full? Can Zen masters breakdance? Are words fighting back? The mystery of conception always points to an axis unconsciously thrown into the endless abyss of the unknown. Is your personality an unnecessary scene for your true presence? What has the Buddha said that we have not listened to? Whose story is history? Transcendence means direct experience is all that is happening. Beyond planes of action, the wise man listens to the self beyond words, in which sincerity has made too humble to hurt a dying world. How do the eternal behave to temporal rudeness? Don't stay thirsty, my friends. Just walk omnisciently as your true nature. Imagination and technology are the horses, if logic, rationality, and divine intuitive intelligence are the chariot. Now wonder, dear reader, who is sitting in the grand picture that is the chariot of the moment? What is the texture of your experience, or have you not playfully discovered the oneness of love yet? For in selfless devotional service, like the tree outside to our moment, we shall live fruitfully without prior karmic disturbances boomeranged from insecure moments of unnecessary actions of thoughts. A smart man looks in front of him. A wise man is the whole moment that sees. Beyond ordinary perception, just like the stars promised, we are extraordinary. Creativity means on the surface of intelligence Creativity means on the surface of the rock there are flows of communicating intelligence, as if our consciousness was a drop of intelligence. It is rather present through a river of multidimensional intelligence. So beyond the conception of ideology, that with a simple awareness to what is within us, we have not only become the source of language, but the source of all light. There are two ways to look at our world in regards to a multidimensional context. Either we are within another world, or another world is within us. It seems the cosmic fractal in nature of the body never stopped growing. Wisdom originates from self-reflection. Trust the moment and let the divine smile. You are the whole of life, not a part of it. You are not on a spinning rock in the middle of nowhere. You are, in caps, your whole, in caps moment. Beyond these words, you are your own enlightenment. We must conduct our consciousness with the full awareness of our whole moment, regardless of how multidimensional or not it would be. The pilots of consciousness are here to navigate as the whole moment of existence. That includes enlightenment too. How much do you trust the intelligence that you are beyond language? How does Pegasus fly and ride the floating fields of paradise at the same time? Perhaps if you stop thinking you're a thought that gets wounded by disassociation, realize you're not a thought and you never were. You're a moment of existential experience, untouchably by all that is, for it is defined, based, and by all of it. My beloved friend, you are your own torchbearer. God is already its own exploration. If you only think you are a creator, in brackets self, you will build blindly. Be your moment. There is nothing simpler than that. Are you reading this book or self-reflectively observing how the nature of your own mind emanates into reality? It's simple. Be sincere, and the seer of all sin is beyond sin. You are the path. There is nothing else. And the essay ends, guys. I don't know, maybe what I'm saying is too intense for this episode. Who knows, the eyes of history can't be judged, because who knows who will be born in the future. Somebody said it's like, man, our species is gonna go extinct, and somebody else said it's like, we don't know though. We don't know what kind of problem solvers are going to be born. What kind of human beings, what sort of, poetically, it's as if, who does the world spirit choose? We are reaching a point where we have to begin the era of the legend of the advanced civilizations. Like anybody who's a subscriber to this YouTube channel, like the best thing you can do is write an essay on what an advanced civilization should be, and I'll be honored by your vision. A person just, it's strange. It's like we think we are people, but we are how the moment is multiple dimensions present simultaneously. Right now, it's like my voice is arising from my inner realms, but my body is just being my outer realms. It's hilarious. It's like if the human being, if the human biological being was compared to a candle, the candle flame is consciousness. And it's as if the brain, in simulating reality, is like how this energy is glowing in the middle of nowhere, It's as if they asked someone, who were you in your past life? And he said, I was an unknown witness of an unknown world. The presence of my attention beyond an archetype of shape. It's as if the person feared what was going to happen to matter, but then realized they were the space. The laughter of the gods is an eternal realization beyond the limits of our space. You see, it's as if matter is crying and space is laughing. Because on some level, what is intelligent is a decision. Who knew? It's as if, what are human beings? Are they physical, non-physical? And we were like, no, human beings were decisions. And they were decisions made based on a consciousness level. Right? So if somebody just thinks that what they see is true, like that's a level of consciousness. But if somebody realizes how their mind is dancing in the space that is being their whole moment, it's as if, imagine God shouted at its creation, who are you, what are you? And the creation, it's like, imagine, in a moment of divine judgment, right? As if the soul was asked, what did you do? What was the point? Like, what do you have to say? does the soul have to say for itself? And imagine the soul chooses silence, right? Imagine a desire, an entity that has scrolled through so many desires. It's as if at some point the person's like, okay, let's say I'm a body. What is the storyline of my body? Okay, evolution. And then the person's like, okay, let's say I'm a mind. What's the story of my mind? Let's say religion. Like, for example, 6,000 years ago, the consciousness entered this. It's like the soul entered the body, you know, of the species, poetically. Or for the mind, a person can have different storylines. For me personally, the relationship I have with my mind is that its edge of my mind is the universe. So in some sense, like the journey of the mind is what can an eternal viewer do in the void. We are eternity becoming responsible for the temporal. The mind is the game of eternal visions, right? And the body is the game of, temporary grace. It's like some part of me wants to shout to everybody on the planet, what does your species deserve? And we'll soon realize that no ideology can replace the great multidimensional value of the future, the kingdoms of mankind. That means if let's say humanity assembled into a kingdom, every human being was part of the kingdom of the human species. Let's say they were defended by the kingdom of the human species. And so it's as if like a human species wandering now from the kingdom of humanity, it's like, will the archaic revival of the castles in the clouds occur? For me, it's like there's a romance a person has with the known, and there's a romance with the unknown. But the romance with the unknown is how the honest self gets to see how the nature of the unknown. It's kind of strange. It's like in order to truly experience the unknown, we have to realize we are being it, right? But to experience the known, we just have to simulate in accordance to it. So whoever you are in this universal sector, whatever you are, whatever sort of consciousness, visible, invisible, whatever, the human species that asked itself, what should I do in the void, in the middle of nowhere? And it's really to fearlessly and endlessly open our eyes to all that the world can be, as if to imagine the future where it's like our actions were dictating, we're suggesting how the minds of the future generations will open, right? To be, let's say, a being in one dimension and trying to be free, that's easy. But to be a multidimensional being seeking freedom, and freedom means a contentment with the peace of the moment, Like, I think deep down how a person lives builds up some sort of emotional, geometrical, let's say, archive, a compilation of like moments. And it's as if people are actually, it's kind of bizarre, right? It's like our body is a biological system, our mind is an ideological system. And an ideological system is born out of language. So literally our minds, if they conclude that they're characters in a story, they have landed in language. So really the mind is the source of duality. The body is the source of singularity. existence is being experienced in a singular way, and simultaneously the mind is being experienced dualistically. That means, I'll say it differently, the mind is dualistically experiencing existence, the body is existentially experiencing the mind. From one angle, existence has a relationship with experience. From another angle, abstract experience has a relationship with real existence. To unlock the full potential of a bunch of creatures freaking out in an unknown world. Civilization was like our retaliation against the void. It's like to be cruel and violent to the human being is to deny the future its potential. This is the value of compassion. Compassion is the resolution of an advanced being. Only the most advanced beings can be compassionate because they can trust the moment regardless. All our advancement is to just trust the moment and in some sense bring forth an activation, a synchronized activation of the mind and the body. Usually this is done through an art form, but the advantage the human being has is like genetically sure. Like we're kind of like, to be a member of a species is like we're all clones of DNA, but at the same time, our DNA is different, meaning that we are our own universe, right? So anybody who's alive right now, regardless of if you think you are a fool or you're a king or whatnot, whatever way your ego, wherever your ego is on this spectrum of conception, realize that what we all don't know is a superior ideal than everything we know. So when a species stops fearing the unknown, an advanced civilization is the only way it can go forth. Consciousness means the intelligence of one system can come and reorganize the intelligence of a lesser system, of another system. Anyways, what else can I say here? Okay, so let's say that if somebody wants to stroll in a hidden city, imagine, or let's say to stroll behind a city behind our eyes, it would mean another way of saying to access a world behind our eyes. So imagine every person right now hearing me, you're like a player in a video game where your mind is like your own private access to an experience of the universe. But your body is in a reality where it's like ultimately the quest of all quests. It has to be considered. It's kind of like I'm telling the human species the only way to live is the most advanced way. That's the only way. Because the advancement would mean no longer unnecessary civil war and more kind of like a global effort, right? It's like we want human beings to live in a way where the earth becomes surprised, The fascination of really what is the purpose of intelligence, what is the purpose of the intellect. It's like, what's the point of being intelligent in a meaningless universe, in a meaningless place? And the purpose of intelligence is to activate its potential before its exit. It's kind of strange, but our inner realms have nowhere else to go. Either they go into the outer realms or they go back into the void. That's the nature of thought, right? Like if a person has a thought and let's say it's a multi-layered complex geometric thought, so it's as if they either write down that thought or the moment passes and the thought enters the abyss. Thoughts are not something we have really. What we have is like an antenna space, like we're like an antenna that has a space, and what moves in that space, it's like the space of our consciousness takes up accesses a small percentage of the unconscious, I don't know, there's something about the idea of the genius, great potential of a species. I don't know, there's something there. It's as if our emotions have made us forget the greatness of our species. I remember watching Game of Thrones and each house had their own banner, And George R.R. Martin did this genius thing of making, in the inner realms, making, House Stark the lions, right? He literally changed the banner emblems of the Lannister house and the Stark house, which is a genius move. But anyways, the idea was that they had banners, there were bannermen, right? There was the idea of that, the symbol that we are, we represent, right? And I don't know, in my mind, I'm living a very minimalistic life right now, but I was thinking, in my mind, if in the future there's going to be the halls of the advanced civilization with banners, and in some sense, it's like the idea is that we begin living in the sky. That's part of the destiny of the human species, It's like a hidden romance with anti-gravity. It's like I can't wait until anti-gravity rooms are made. It's like, imagine coming home after a long day, jumping in the air and just remaining hovering in the air. If somebody told me what kind of house would cost $1 billion, I would say a house that has anti-gravity level controls, right? That means imagine you bought a house and then you could control the gravity level of how you were experiencing the house, right? I don't know, there's something about our limits being the destiny we must surpass, right? Anyways, guys, I'll bring the talk to an end, and I'll just say that I'm pretty much saying, okay, if there's the idea of a hidden city, we can have the concept of a hidden outer city and a hidden inner city, okay? It would be another way of saying a hidden inner city is like the karma of our inner life that our mind has access to, Like if somebody wondered about the karma of imagination, right? right? Like in monotheistic religions, imagination is seen as it's kind of hilarious. It's like imagination is seen as blasphemy if it deviates from the imagination that is that religious reality. So what I'm trying to say is that an advanced civilization will come that has such an awareness to geometry that we realize we are the human being is not just what it physically is, it is the potential of that physical existence, right? It's literally how far it's literally every human being born is like a pilot, and it's as if their lifetime, it's like everybody else, it's like a bunch of pilots who can't fly yet and living in like the same world, right? We're all waiting to see what the great performances of our minds are. There's a strange feeling I have. It's like when an advanced civilization is going to happen, it's like greatness is going to enter the room. Imagine the presence of truth entering like a moment. Like it would be in some sense like when truth was always here, we knew what part of our character was a simulation, you know. So whether we're strolling, you know, behind our eyes, whether we're strolling in cyber cities, whether we're strolling in linguistic cities, you know, whether in the future we step out of cyberspace and, you know, we live a life where technology has become man's best friend, you know. And what the future means is that what the past and present deserve is to get to see the future. So the purpose of the past and present is to get the future here, you know, to advance the future. It's as if we're being like, why are we being genetical torchbearers? And then, and we realize the light of the torch of our consciousness means that every person's eyes is like the entrance of a new earth on the earth, you know. It's as if they're like, you know, you get one life, and the person's like, okay, if I get one life, then what ideal is the governing ideal of that reality, you know? And it's kind of like an advanced being having access to all dimensions at once, a freedom that is experientially absolute. It's like an omnipresent being can never be late. You know. It's like they asked the enlightened guru, why were you so late to your own ceremony, right? And the guru was like, the guru is not the real guru, it's not the physical guru, you know, your real guru is with you all the time. You know, it doesn't matter if I'm there or not, you know. The world of mysticism is kind of like, it holds a sort of hilarious genius to it, I'm telling you. There's something about wondering about the unknown that redeems the mind by resetting the soul, you know. Resetting a moment, or I should say resetting the mind as an awareness that the soul is actually, we are so used to it that we are the unknown. We're unknown beings right now. Right? And we're using language and communication to kind of like, you know, as Carl Jung would say, the persona is a mask to mask an unknown truth to a known world. Because, like, to want to get to see an advanced future, like, that's the coolest thing ever. There's nothing that beats that, you know. I can't think of a greater idea on Earth than the advancement of everything. You know. That means imagine the human species didn't want to experience one victory, but the human species wanted to experience an infinite victory. It's infinite dance against time, you know, or it's battle against time. For who knows when will the eyes become the sky, you know. There will come a moment where the energy will be left to, it's kind of like the periodic table goes back to itself. And so attention is left being a mysterious stare, you know, in the void that held the void we defined in reality. You see, there's greater mysteries, and all we can do is advance the ability of the species to confront them. I'm saying for the first time, the greatness of the species has become the greatest idea. Rise, mankind, rise. Much blessings and namaste.